Hello everyone, this is Coach B with MasterChess.com, and in this video I'm going to go over the Lucena position. In this position it's white to move, and if the king gets out, let's say king to c7 to try to promote the pawn, well, he's not going to be very successful in doing that, as the black rook will start a series of check. The rook will come to c1 check. If the king moves to b7, the rook will simply go behind the pawn, preventing it from promoting, and then the king will have to come and defend. After that, the rook will come back to c1 check, and white cannot make any progress. So coming back from the beginning, the correct play to win for white starts with the rook to f2 check. From here, black has three main ways to play. He can move the king to e6, or he can retreat the king to g7 or g6. Retrieving the king to g8 will be the same play as retrieving it to g7. So we're only going to look at king to e6, king to g7, and king to g6. If black moves the king to e6, here white will move the king to e8. And now if black tries to move rook to a8 check, this doesn't work, as white will simply promote to a queen, and after the rook takes the queen and white captures back, white still has the rook and winning is trivial. So coming back, the best play for black here is moving the rook to h1, but even this doesn't save black. White can safely promote the pawn to a queen, and after rook to h8 check, this is not checkmate, as our rook is on the f-file and we could simply block the check. And now black can capture the rook, and after white captures back, he does have the queen to win the game from here. And coming back, after rook to f2 check, if black instead moves the king to g7, the correct play here for white is rook to f4. This is an excellent move that it's needed. Now after this, the black king is caught out and cannot come and attack the pawn, so white will be able to start taking the king out. After, let's say, rook to d1, white will move the king out, and if black starts a series of check, let's say rook to e1 check, the king will move to d6, rook to d1 check, the king will move to e6. We still need to protect the pawn. It will be a mistake to move the king away, because black can take the pawn. And after rook to e1 check, the white king can jump to the square d5 now. After rook to d1 check, white will now be able to bring the rook in front of the king, protecting it from the checks. And if black takes the rook, white can capture back, and you could see, because the black king was moved away from the pawn, he's not going to be able to come and stop it from promoting, and now white will be able to win the game with the queen. And coming back, if black doesn't take the rook here and moves away, white will simply promote on the next move, and will be able to easily win with the queen and rook versus the rook. And coming back, the last option we're going to look at is king to g6. Here, white will still move the rook to f4, and now, being on g6, the black king can attack the rook with king to g5. But this doesn't help. Here, white will simply move the rook to f8, and now after something like king to g6, the white king will come out, king to c7, and even if the series of checks comes, let's say rook to c1 check, king to b6, rook to b1 check, king to c5, the king can come marching towards the rook, so the checks will eventually stop. Let's say rook to c1, king to b4, rook to b1, king to c3, and now the rook will come behind the pawn, as the king will attack the rook on the next move. But here, since the white rook covers the 8th rank, the white can simply promote the pawn, and after the rook takes the pawn, rook takes back, and white will be able to win with the king and rook. And coming back, another way to win here is rook to c4, sheltering the white king from checks. So after something like, let's say, king to f6, the white king can come out, and if the black king moves to e7, white will simply promote with checks, so he can't do that. Best play will be rook to d1, but even after this, white will simply promote to a queen, and now the rook will have to sacrifice, the king will take the rook, and the win from here is trivial with the king and rook. In this next position, it's white to move again, but the difference is that black has the rook on the right side as instead of the left side. The play from here is very similar. White will start with rook to f2 check. After this, if the black king moves to g6, the rook will simply come to f4 again, and if rook to c1 trying to block off the king coming on the left side, the white king will just come on the other side, king to e7. After the series of checks, again the king will simply just come in front of the pawn, and after the rook to d1 check, he will bring the rook sheltering from the checks, and after the take and take, white will simply promote and win the game from here. And coming back after rook to f2 check, if the king moves to e6 instead, here white has to be careful. He's going to have to play a little bit different. If he moves the king to e8 here, similar to the other time, this is not a win anymore, as black will be able to come with check. And even though we will be able to shelter from that check, after black takes the rook and we take the rook, the black king will be able to take the pawn now, since black didn't need to waste the move to bring the rook on the right side. So coming back after the king moves to e6, the correct play will be rook to c2. And now if the black rook will come to h7, attacking the pawn as it's not able to move, white will simply move the king to c8, and after the rook takes the pawn, here white will simply attack the king with check, and now black will lose the rook. He's going to move the king to d6 to protect it, but after rook to d2 check again and the king moves away, white will simply be able to take the rook. Well, now black cannot capture back, and white will be able to win with the king and rook. And coming back, if the rook instead of moving to h7 will attack the king with check, white king will move out, and if the black king moves, let's say king to e7, we will be able to check the king will have to move away, and then we will promote the pawn. And after the rook captures, we will capture back and win the game from here. In this next position, it's white to move again. Here, black has the rook behind the pawn, attacking the pawn, and we also are dealing with the knight pawn, but the play is just the same. We're going to start with rook to d1 check to move the king away from the pawn. Here, if the king moves to e6, we're simply going to bring our rook to d4, and after this, the white king will be able to come out. If black moves the rook to a2, we are going to come out on c7, rook to c2 check, king to b6, rook to b2 check, king to c6, still defending the pawn, rook to c2 check, and now king to b5. After rook to b2 check, we bring the rook in front, and after the capture, we will promote the pawn and win the game from here. And coming back after rook to d1 check, if the king moves to c6 instead, we saw this play as well. We're going to bring the king to c8. After rook to h2, we're going to promote the pawn, rook to h8 check, we're going to block the check, and after the take and take, we will be able to win with the queen. Coming back, I also want to mention that after rook to c6 and king to c8, black here cannot capture the pawn to b7, as white will be able to check the king, and now the king has to defend the rook, and all he's got is king to b6. We are going to check the king again, and after the king moves away, we are going to be able to win the rook, and black will not be able to capture back. So from here, the winning is easy as well. In this next position, white has a rook pawn. And as you will see in almost all of the rook endgames, the rules for the rook pawns will always be different than the rules for the central pawns, simply because they are on the edge of the board, and the same maneuvers will not apply for the rook pawns. So with the rook pawn, white will be able to win if he has the move in this position, if he can cut off the king to the short side of the board. Treat this as the middle of the board. And if white is able to cut out to the short side of the board, meaning if he will be able to move the rook to e1, he will be able to win this position. Rook attacks the e file, and the right side will be considered the short side. As you can see, there's 3 files to the right of this line, and then there are 4 files to the left of this line. So we will call the left side the long side, and then the right side the short side. So if the king can be cut off on the short side of the board, white will be able to win. After this, let's say black will move the rook to b3, trying to keep the white king captive so he's not able to come out to promote his pawn. Well, after this, the rook will come to c1. After something like king to e7, the rook will come to c8. After king to d7, the rook will come and challenge the other rook on the b file. So now, obviously, black doesn't want to take the rook, as the pawn will take and promote at the same time. So he's going to move the rook to a3, going behind the pawn. And now white can come with the king out. After this, black will start the series of checks. Let's say rook to b3. The king will move to a6. After rook to a3 check, the white king can move to b6. After rook to b3 check, the king now can go to the c file, so king to c5. Again, black cannot take white's rook, as the pawn will take and promote at the same time. And after rook to a3, white is now able to promote the pawn. And after black will take the queen, the rook will capture back, and now white will win with the king and rook. And coming back to the same position, if it's black to move, black will be able to get a draw. All he has to do is move the king to e7, and now white will not be able to cut the king off to the short side of the board. All he's got is rook to d1, cutting off the king, but again, this is the long side now of the board, as we have 3 files on the left and 4 files on the right. And after something like rook to b3, let's say rook to c1, trying to do the same maneuver, well, now the king will come to d7, blocking white from reaching the square c8 with the rook, and white doesn't have much to play. If he tries something like rook to h1, trying to come on the other side, the black king will simply come to c7. After rook to h7 check, the black king will move to c8. After rook to h8 check, black will simply move back with the king to c7. After something like rook to b8 challenging the black rook, obviously black doesn't want to take the rook, as white will be able to take back with the pawn and promote, so he's going to move the rook to a3. And after rook to b7 check, the black king will move to c8. Rook to b8 check, king to c7. And white cannot make any progress. And coming back from the beginning, after king to e7, even if white tries to do the same maneuver right away, for example rook to h1 right away, black still has enough time to move the king to d7. After rook to h8, king to c7, rook to b8, the black rook will now move to a2. And after rook to b7, king to c8, rook to b8, king to c7, white cannot make any progress again, resulting only in a draw. Alright, thank you so much for watching this video. I encourage you to visit my website, masteryourchess.com, where you will be able to practice these positions against the computer. If you liked my video, please subscribe and don't forget to check out my new website, masteryourchess.com, where you can learn, practice, test, and master your chess knowledge.